Buddy Greg here, and this is another video in the series of videos about bicycle trails in the Iowa City and Coralville area. And in this video, I want to talk a little bit about using Google Maps and how you can use that here and just about anywhere to see what the local trails are like. And that sometimes would be even better than a printed map because you can zoom in and get details and everything. So this is the typical Google map that you're used to seeing, right? With Street View and some designations between major streets and minor streets. But if I go to the menu here, I can actually click on bicycling and the bicycle trails show up. Pretty cool, huh? And you'll notice, this isn't available on your mobile device if you're using an iPhone for maps or Google Maps on an iPhone or Android device or whatever. When you go to route a map, trip or whatever from one destination to another, you have to choose between the car or public transit or walking. Usually you don't get bicycling as an option, but these trails are available in this desktop version. Now that may change or may have already changed by the time I get this video produced, but I just wanted to show you that. So in addition, if you want to get an idea of terrain, you can do that as well. And then the satellite view is also helpful. Now that usually covers up the terrain, so you notice that gets turned off at that point. But before I go into the satellite view and terrain view, let me just turn those off. Let's just take a look at the bicycle trail view with the streets. And I'm going to zoom in on what, as you can see here, I'm kind of zooming into the center of the map. And what I find at the center of the map is Iowa River Power Restaurant. Now, this is not a paid ad for the restaurant, and in fact, they're best known for their dinners and Sunday brunches. So if you're riding during the day, they're probably going to be closed, as they were when I was doing my videos. But the reason I point it out is because it's centrally located, and it's an intersection of 4 different trail systems, which you're not really going to find anywhere else. Okay, so it does make a good landmark to start from. Now, in one of my videos, I recorded this ride going north to the Iowa River Landing, and that's a nice short ride, but you can see quite a bit here. There's a Back Pocket Brewing, a local brewery. They have pizza and other food. The High Ground Cafe is very popular, nice coffee shop. And in here is 30 Hop, a restaurant with, you can see 239 reviews, close to 5 stars, but and a lot of other stuff in here. And definitely worth exploring. In addition to these little businesses, local businesses, there's a wetlands. They call it Iowa River Landing Wetland Park, but it's really an amazing place with informational signs and a walkway that goes through this wetland park. There's prairie grasslands in this area as well, kind of along the river. So what looks like could be, a 10-minute bike ride can turn into like a few hours if you're actually stopping and checking everything out. Now, you could just kind of loop around and come right back to Iowa River Power, but something not to be overlooked is just across the street from the Iowa River Landing is the Iowa City Coralville Area Convention and Visitors Bureau, and there's a lot that they offer. It's great for people who've just moved here, people that are visiting here, maybe you've lived here for a while and you just didn't know about this, but it's something worth stopping by and checking out. You can even become a member if you want. There are advantages to that as well. So I thought I'd mention that because for folks that are new to the area, you can get more details. So anyway, this is all a really interesting place to ride. And then similarly, starting out from Iowa River Power and going west, you can take 5th Street here. And see, it looks like there wouldn't be much going on, but I'm going to flip on the satellite view and just show you and zoom in that there's a whole trail system here. And it's not even highlighted on the Google Maps system, but this trail goes and connects to here, and you can go back and go under the bridge and get to the river. So there's a lot of stuff to see over here. But if you keep, oh, and then just before I go on, this is a really fun trail right here. It goes into these woods and then curves in through here through this residential area and then on across 6th Street and then to Central Park, and then it kind of dead ends. But even though it's a dead end trail, it's worth checking that out too. That's a lot of fun. There are some historic buildings here in Coralville that you'd want to check out, probably an old schoolhouse and an old, I'm going to probably make a mistake here, but I think it's a courthouse. But anyway, two interesting buildings there. And then just continuing west on 5th Street, you can see along here there's a lot of really nice local businesses in buildings with like apartments or condos above. So a lot of really nice construction and development here that's gone on recently. Here too, those buildings. And then continuing on 5th Street. Now, normally I don't like riding on streets or near streets. There's noise and pollution. It's dangerous. And but this really is a nice street in here, as you will see. And you can, it's not really heavily trafficked. When people are driving there, they tend to keep it kind of slow, which is nice. And then eventually, heading west, you'll end up at the New Pioneer Food Co-op area, and there's a lot of other stuff to see here, a coffee shop, and a little bit further, if you're interested in architecture, you might want to just take a look at some of the buildings in this area, particularly the new Arts Center and the Coralville Public Library, which is really pretty amazing. And even if you're not into libraries, it's worth just stopping, going in, and taking a look, because they have a coffee shop, they have just a lot of stuff there. And then a little further, there's a nice lake here in the Morrison Park. So anyway, and if you want, you can continue out Fifth Street, and there's a lot more to see. In fact, let me just speed it up here a little bit, and we'll zoom out, and you can see that all along 2nd Street, which is sort of parallels 5th Street here, is a really wide sidewalk. It gets a little noisy with the traffic sometimes, but it's a nice ride because you've got plenty of room, and that will be a quick ride out to the Coral Ridge Mall. And from the Coral Ridge Mall, if you head south from that street there, and I'm going to zoom in so you can kind of get an idea what's going on. There are a few of these spots where you're talking about, a pretty serious intersection of traffic. So you may get, some traffic backing up here, and you just want to be careful. But if you cross the road here, you can get to Capana Coffee and Gelato. And now that looks like an empty parking lot, but that's because this is an old map. So anyway, they have a bicycle repair stand or station, with the pump and the tools and all that, which is kind of nice. And then, as you can see from that Capana coffee shop there, you can kind of head south and then get on this trail that goes along through the woods here and then out through, this is federally preserved grasslands, wetlands, I think. And then it dead ends, which is fine. I don't mind taking a trail that has a dead end because, you get to see some interesting stuff along the way. So anyway, that's definitely worth going out that little leg of that trail system. And then this Clear Creek Trail, which follows Clear Creek along, is really quite nice. And just to kind of orient you again, we're now talking about, we started out way over here and ended up way over here, and riding this green trail all the way over to Mormon Trek. So let's zoom in on that ride real quick. And so it goes through these woods here. You're going to see some really interesting, in this initial part of it, it looks like you're in Florida Everglades or something, like little swamp areas or whatever, but quite interesting, a lot of wildlife in there. And then there's a point at which you'll cross Camp Cardinal Boulevard and get to this Tom Harkin trailhead, which in the picture there you can see is a public rest area. And then if I zoom out a little bit, you can see how that trail then goes up and through these woods. Now, it's not really clear here by just looking at the map with the trees showing, but let me get out of satellite view, go into terrain view, and you'll see that there's quite a bit of hills here that you'll be going up and around, and it's kind of a windy, hilly trail, but it does make it very interesting. It's like a little bit of a roller coaster ride going through there. I'm going to go back to satellite just to get you oriented again. So if you keep riding along here through those woods, eventually you'll get to an open field, and that's sort of a downhill part of the ride there. And you'll get to this T intersection. So if you were to turn left, it would take you across a bridge, across the Clear Creek, and back over to New Pioneer Food. There's a bridge that the trail can go under, that railroad bridge, and out here. And again, 2nd Street, like I said before, it's a little bit busy, so go ahead and use the button on the sidewalk there to indicate you want to walk, and then you can ride across and then across here and get into there. But rewinding it a bit here, let's say you get to that T intersection and you don't go left. If you just keep kind of going straight, as it were, or turning right there, you'll continue along the Clear Creek area, and eventually you'll get to this fork in the road, which you can either just go straight like another 2 minutes to get to Hawkeye Park Road. It's like an access road to the different sports complexes. Or if you turn left at that fork in the road, you'll go back into this Mormon Handcart Trail area. And that's really quite interesting. That trail, it seems, is a little less maintained. It's a little narrower, but really, worth the ride. That's kind of interesting. And that's probably just 5 minutes of riding right there. And the sports complex is nice. There's a trail, actually, that continues through, I'm going to zoom in, this dotted green trail, and then a portion of the trail that's not even marked in Google Maps, but it's this gray trail here. And then you can connect up to Prairie Meadow Drive and back out to Mormon Trek Boulevard. On the right, you see there's the Finkbine Golf Course, which is another landmark helpful to kind of know about. And from Mormon Trek Boulevard, if you're trying to go from the sports complex area, let's say over here to Stella Restaurant, you might think, oh, I'll just ride along this street, or take the sidewalk by the street. There's another way to get there that doesn't take much longer, and it's really quite nice, would be to get on this sidewalk, and if we were talking about being on the trail here, we would just take Hawkeye Park Road or take the Mormon Handcart Trail, but to get out to this intersection here with Hawkeye Park Road and Mormon Trek. And then really the only way to get there from here is to take that sidewalk. And even though you can see a lot of beautiful or interesting aspects of this golf course here on the right, it's all going to be blocked from your view by these trees that are on a hill. So don't be looking for that while you're riding, because you won't see it. But anyway, once you get to underneath this railroad bridge, shortly after that, and this is why I was suggesting that you be on the right side of the street, there's this Mormon Trek Coralville Strip Nature Trail that starts here near this parking lot. And that is also a sort of short but really interesting ride with these sports fields off to the north there. You ride along here, and there's kind of a wetland area and a lot of prairie grass. There are some grass mown trails, and if you have a fat tire bike, or your bike is capable of doing some off trail riding a little bit, you might enjoy that. But usually I would just take this trail that's marked here in the middle, and then you can see that there's this brown trail, which is dirt unpaved trails. So that would be a possible route also for somebody doing some off-road riding, or off the trail riding. But then keep heading kind of east, or I would say southeast, and then take a right, and then go up the hill. There's a really steep hill here. If you're going the other way, you can go pretty fast down that hill. And then what you can do is once you get to this street here, it's called the Finkbine Commuter Drive. This is a little shortcut secret that is not on the Google Maps, or maybe not on other maps, but you can take the sidewalk over the railroad track, cross the street here, you can see, and then there's a trail that hugs these trees, and you can just kind of keep following that trail along, and it follows along the parking area, and then eventually curves around here and parallels the Finkbine Commuter Drive, which, other than rush hour in the morning or evening, that's usually a pretty quiet and pretty dry ride through there on that trail. You'll pass this building here, which is golf cart maintenance for the Finkbine Golf Course. Just keep going. Here you'll see some tennis courts and a pool. That's part of the University Athletic Club, which is here. So that's another kind of good point of getting oriented there. And then the trail reaches here to Melrose Avenue. And on Melrose Avenue, there are sidewalks on either side. I would suggest you may want to stay on the north side of the street and just kind of ride along here. What looks like an area under construction has actually been pretty well developed here. University Heights Police Department is there, and not yet shown on the map is a really nice pizza place that's coming in here, and I'm just going to leave that as a surprise because I'm going to do more videos about that. And then just kind of head down Melrose Avenue. Now at some point the street widens a little bit. You can actually see here there's a white line, and that's a marker for the either some people use it as on-street parking, but in general when people aren't parking there it makes a nice bicycle lane. And then you get to kind of the center, what used to be really the center of University Heights, because the police department was here. But there's Stella Restaurant, and that's a good spot to stop at along the way. And if you're noticing the review 2.5, that is skewed because of anyway, it's I wouldn't say it's an accurate review. You'll have to review it yourself, but I'd give it like a 5 stars. I think it's a really nice restaurant, nice neighborhood restaurant. Now, from here, if we zoom out, the green line you're seeing there is an indication that these are bicycle-friendly streets. So you're not really going to be getting in any actual, bike trails at this point. But if you're on Melrose Avenue, I wouldn't necessarily call it bike-friendly. You want to be careful because there are people that are, particularly depending on the time of day, they get a little anxious in their cars trying to get from one place to another. So I would say, maybe stay on the sidewalk or stay in this bike lane, but be very alert. And then when you get a chance to, and just to give you a sense of where this is at, you want to turn left onto South Grand Avenue. And when you turn left onto South Grand Avenue, stay to the right. You'll get to this roundabout. You can go kind of 1/3 of the way around that roundabout, and then work your way over here to the sidewalk that goes along Grand Avenue on the north side of that. And then ride down here, and then this trail continues. It's not very well marked here on Google Maps, but you can ride across this bridge, and you'll see a sign as you're entering this bridge. It says, "Slow your wheels." So at the other end of the bridge, it says you can't ride on the bridge. But then at this end of the bridge, it says you can ride on the bridge, but, be courteous, use common sense. So, yeah, isn't that the way all laws should be? Just tell people to use common sense. But anyway, you'll see these conflicting signs. And in fact, on the entry here in this loop part of the walkover bridge, there are 2 signs. One says, ride slowly, be careful. The other one says don't ride. So, you have to use your judgment there. The reason I point out this particular path, which is, kind of in a maze of other options for you, is that once you get to the other side of this bridge, you can either go along this bridge and cross the river that way, or you can ride along Iowa River something trail. I don't know why they're calling it that, RC Trail. But anyway, this is Riverside Drive. And if you go north, it's really kind of a nice ride. I'll just sort of zoom out here, but it's a nice ride up to another bridge that crosses over, or you can make it over here to the Iowa Memorial Union, which is another destination in the area worth checking out. There's a Java House coffee shop in there that's open most daytime hours. And there's an excellent bookstore in the Iowa Memorial Union, and restaurants, and even a hotel. There's a lot happening here, which you don't want to overlook. And then another bridge that you can cross. And the reason I would mention this is because if you cross this bridge here, after you've eaten and gotten all caffeinated and whatever, and visited the Hawk shop, you can get to this, again, Iowa River Trail, and there's some really interesting architecture that in this older Google map is not showing up, but there's the new art building, there's the University Art Library, as it's being called here, inside of the older Arts Building West, and the University of Iowa College of Public Health, which is a LEED certified building. So this, you're starting to get into some really interesting buildings and architecture here. You can stop into this Iowa Art Building West, and there's a pond. It's really quite interesting. But if you stop in, they do have a little restaurant in there as well. And from there, I think an interesting ride would be either taking Riverside Drive as it continues to Park Road, or trying to make it along here through past the Iowa River Park Road Bridge. But either way, however you get there, there had been some construction going on. I'm not sure the status of that now. I probably should provide an update. But anyway, there's bike riding that you can do in the city park that you can see here. There is, a trail system that goes all the way to the end of City Park. We call it the end of City Park, but just the city park kind of curves around. Sometimes that's flooded, so you want to kind of check ahead of time to find out the status of that. It's not often, but occasionally. And then if you cross the Park Road Bridge, there is a lot of construction going on right now, but you can navigate through it, and eventually you can get out to Foster Road. And the reason I mentioned Foster Road is because Foster Road is what gets you out, as you can see. And on Foster Road, there's some really steep hills, so you're going to be going slow, and the road is narrow. So I would recommend on those slower segments to just go ahead and take the sidewalk. You're going to probably have joggers going past you, So anyway, just take it easy there. But following Foster Road out gets you to the Dingo Bar, and it gets you to the Peninsula neighborhood. And so at the city square, whoops, I'm going to exit out of this. At the city town square, there are quite a few businesses in here, and I'm going to zoom in so you can see. There's a playground, and there's a wine bar and bistro, and a bunch of other things. But this is a nice place to kind of take a break. If you've been riding the bike for a while and you want to stop, the Dingo Bar is there. And then you can just go back to Foster Road or take one of these other roads to get to the Thornberry Off-Leash Dog Park, which is, a nice place to explore. And then getting a little further, you find that we're back at Iowa River Power Restaurant. So that sounded like kind of a rambling guided tour, but there was a purpose to that. So essentially we went, west from Iowa River Power, went all the way out to Capana, had the option to kind of go north and explore some things there, or just tour back through here through the woods, and then through this beautiful area here, the Handcart Trail, and over to Stella, and then downtown, and then through City Park area, or getting to the other side of the river and getting to Foster Road, and etc. So anyway, you can see there are a lot of trails that if you have a plan and a map and maybe the help of some videos, you can really map out a nice day's ride. And it's not so much about the ride, because I suppose if you got on your lightweight carbon fiber sports racing bike and really went at it, you could probably do the whole loop in a very short period of time. But it's really that there's a lot to see and do along the way. So it's kind of like a mini RAGBRAI, if you're familiar with RAGBRAI. And so I don't think I've left out anything. I guess for those that want to keep watching the video, I'll take it a little bit further. I'll take you on an outer loop, what I would call an outer loop. Takes a little bit longer. But that would be to go from perhaps Iowa River Power, cross that walking bridge, get over here into the Peninsula neighborhood, stop at the Dingo Bar, of course, and then follow Foster Road around, and you'll notice there is this really not obvious but really interesting Mackinac Drive, and then Manitou Trail. But basically, you'll go back into this development area, and you'll see a spot here where there's just like a little parking spot. I think that's for servicing the electrical building, electrical boxes here. But basically, that's where the real trail begins that goes north under the interstate and then into this water park area, which you can see is a pretty elaborate trail system. And the colored water here it's part of the waterworks. And so that's water that's being treated, I guess, or whatever. So, but it looks very interesting. It's like the Dead Sea or something, or maybe Salt Lake City, the Salt Lakes, Great Salt Lakes. But anyway, so you'll see these different water containment places and the trail winding around. And I'm going to zoom out again just to give you perspective. So you've gone from, whoops, that's too much perspective. Okay, you've gone from the Iowa River Power east through here, crossing the interstate. You're in the waterworks area. Now you can go from that waterworks area following this trail up to the Oakdale Boulevard. And if you want to head west from there, that will take you over to Press Coffee Company, which is here. Then that's just sort of a landmark for you. And then you can head west along Oakdale Boulevard. You're passing First Avenue. Keep going on Oakdale Boulevard. And let me just turn off satellite view for a second. Actually, let me turn that back on. Appreciate your patience. But anyway, you can see we're following Oakdale Boulevard. There's a golf course there. And eventually, we will get to the Oakdale campus. And then from there, you can see there's a trail. Now, this is not easy to find, but basically, you'll be looking for this trail system in the Oakdale campus area. There's a parking lot here, and there again, you're not going to know that that's a trail because you're just riding across a parking lot. But here it's labeled as North Ridge Trail. This is really a nice trail system that just kind of winds around through these the fields and through the woods, and eventually gets you to this North Ridge Recreation Center, which I'm going to zoom down here, and we're just continuing to travel south, and there's North Ridge Park. And this building here at North Ridge Park has a green roof, and some other sustainability initiatives were built into that. So that's definitely an interesting thing interesting site worth seeing. And then again, here's a bridge under the interstate. You can go to the Coral Ridge Mall, which has just sort of endless amount of stores and restaurants and things to explore. And then from the Coral Ridge Mall, you can go south to Capana Coffee and then follow that loop that I was mentioning earlier. So that would be what I would call the longer loop. And then for those who are really ambitious, I'm going to zoom out here and show you that you can go up to North Liberty, starting again from Iowa River. We go north here, and either taking this pass through Peninsula neighborhood and through the Waterworks Park and up and Oakdale Boulevard over, or if you want to kind of take a little bit of a shortcut, you can just sort of go through the Iowa River Landing area, cross the street, and then go north on First Avenue. Just take the sidewalk. There is a nice bridge that you can cross the interstate using that, and then continue north. And then this First Avenue will get you pretty quickly to Oakdale Boulevard. And then I think the most beautiful way to get there, maybe more scenic, or maybe two options, I guess, would be one, going over to what is really like North Dubuque Street, and then riding. Much of it is actually a trail, but part of it would just be riding on the side of the road. But you could take that Dubuque Street all the way out to North Liberty. And I'm just going to kind of scroll the map a little bit further. And yeah, here we are, North Liberty. But alternatively to that is, instead of taking the North Dubuque Street, would be, I'm going to go back down to where we were. And I showed you before how to get to that Oakdale Boulevard and Oakdale campus. From there, there's a really nice trail system that goes along the railroad track. And you can see that here, this green trail. And you can just follow that all the way north and get to North Liberty using that bike trail. And so, that's a nice ride. Once you're into North Liberty, I have not ventured much beyond there. I know there are a lot of folks who will take country roads and do a lot of long distance riding from there. But anyway, that route that I just showed you is a way to get out there. And if you wanted to do it as a loop, I guess you could take the trail going north and come back on North Dubuque, or vice versa. So just to recap, what we've seen would be a short loop around the area, including some of the downtown campus area, a little longer loop going up through the Oakdale campus area, and then even longer than that would be going out to North Liberty. I tend to stay in this general area here when I'm doing my riding, just because it's a little bit closer to home and easier to get to things. But for folks that like the longer distance bike riding, there are those other options. And I'm not going to spend much time in this video talking about Iowa City. It's a city, so there aren't going to be lots of little trails going through forests in the city. There are some streets that are friendlier than others. Once you get further out to the east side of town, there is an interesting trail section here from Scott Park going along through the streets here and then connecting up and going to Court Hill Park. And really through these neighborhoods is a wonderful trail system that'll take you all the way back over to Muscatine Avenue. So if you navigate your way through the city and get to this east side, there's a lot to explore there. And similarly, worth mentioning is there's a whole trail system. If you go south from Iowa River Power and go to the, I see there's the IMU. Well, anyway, going south, and from where we were over here, let's say Hawkeye Rec Center, you can go along Mormon Trek. And once you get on Mormon Trek, it's not super friendly, but you could take the sidewalk, and eventually you'll get to West Benton Street, and this is where I wanted to zoom in and kind of show you. So that orients you. It's south on Mormon Trek. You get to West Benton, you turn, head east, and there's a really nice, probably takes you 5 minutes to ride it, but it's a beautiful 5 minutes, a nice park here called Willow Creek Park. And you'll want to ride on the east side and then loop around and ride on the west side as well, because both sides of that are really interesting. Eventually you'll get to Kiwanis Park. There are some community gardens here. You see it sort of loops around. Now, the map shows that there's a trail going behind this may look like a parking lot, but it's actually a reservoir. It's a body of water there. This is really kind of an interesting place to explore. And if you walk your bike along behind these buildings or to the north of them, you can get all the way to the other side. And just that whole area is interesting. It's a nice trail and a comfortable ride, and much of it's in the shade, which is nice if it's a hot day. What I want to draw your attention to is here, where the trail essentially continues south and southeast and then sort of ends at Willow Creek CrossFit, it looks like, or Adams Upholstery. These are, it's kind of an industrial zoned business area with, different businesses there. But if you'll take this Willow Creek Drive, a landmark to be familiar with is Dane's Dairy. It's a popular local ice cream shop. And eventually you'll get to this access road called Willow Creek Court. And from Willow Creek Court, you'll want to go across the street and you'll see a trail begins right here at the corner of Sunset and Willow Creek Court. And that trail continues along Highway 1, and you can really kind of zoom along through here. There's a slight incline at one point, but then it goes downhill, and you can really enjoy that ride just coasting along. And then you'll see there's an entrance to Hawks Ridge. Now this doesn't look like much on the map, but if you see that riding by, it's an apartment mega complex. And if you're interested in architecture and housing and that type of thing, you might want to bike on up there and just sort of check it out, because it is interesting if you've never seen anything quite like it. Essentially, it's hundreds of people living in this complex who share, there's, weights room and basketball court and hot tub, and each building has its own amenities. So there's a big meeting room, so it's pretty amazing. In the past, I think it was possible for non-students to live there. I don't know what the status is now, but anyway, it's an interesting place. And then continuing on this trail, you will eventually get to Hudson's South Side Tap. That's a good landmark to remember. It's a locally owned neighborhood, locally sourced from farms, restaurant, and if you read the title, you might think it was just like a bar, but it's far from that. It's pretty amazing, worth stopping and checking out. And just kind of an FYI, the UPS store. We've got our own little locally owned UPS store, which is really nice because for a long time you had to, go all the way out to Coralville or downtown to get something shipped off. And if you wanted additional assistance, it's just really nice to have a local neighborhood UPS store. Well, you can continue down this trail, and before you get to Riverside Drive, you want to turn onto Orchard Street. And you can kind of weave through anywhere you want to get over to West Benton. And if you keep it on the sidewalks and through the parking lots and stuff, being careful, you don't have to mix it up with the cars. But eventually you're going to want to cross, and where you see this green trail picking up on West Benton, you can cross there. And before I go too far, I just want to point out, you notice that trail also goes north along the river, and that's definitely worth exploring. Even if you just kind of go up and come back, it's really interesting to see that segment of the trail. But anyway, you'll continue on West Benton Street, and then East Benton Street. And what you're going to be looking for is, as you get over here past the Iowa City Recycling Center, you'll turn south again, and what you're wanting is this trail that picks up again at this turn in South Clinton Street. And there, you get back onto a dedicated trail that goes along Ralston Creek and eventually comes out down here and crosses underneath Highway 6. And from that point, there's a fork in the road where you can, or fork in the trail, where you can either go south and head, down this way. There's quite a bit of a ride there, or you can head east and continue on what is first a trail and then turns into a really wide sidewalk that's significantly removed from the highway. and you can head along Highway 6. And there's a lot going on here. I'll just point out a couple of items. The Goodwill store. Iowa City has one of, I'm told there's only like half a dozen in the entire country. It's called a reboot store. So they get computers from all over the region. They clean them up, fix them up, and they resell them for just pennies on the dollar. It's really amazing. And you get a computer, laptop, desktop, comes with Windows 10, comes with a restore CD, and like for $150. So anyway, I just have to mention that. And then Hy-Vee, there's a lot of good grocery stores around, but Hy-Vee on the south side is just sort of a landmark for people to be familiar with. This says U.S. Post Office. It's not. Maybe that's there because they sell stamps. I don't know, but we'll get to the U.S. Post Office in a minute. Anyway, those are two big landmarks to know about. And then as you keep heading sort of east and east by southeast here, you'll eventually see a Kmart on the right, and there's a Taco Bell. And back in here, past all of that, you'll see Slumberland Furniture, is the new Iowa City Post Office. And it's not labeled on this map, but that's where the post office is. It used to be downtown, and that was really convenient for a lot of people. Now it's here on this sort of southeast side of town. But anyway, that's important to know about. And this trail just kind of fizzles out in a way. It like dead ends over here by Hollywood Boulevard, or you can kind of cross the road and go over to Spruce Street. But there's not really any obvious recommended route that I know of from that point, other than just trying to make your way over to this Sycamore Mall area. And if you're new to town or just unfamiliar with this, you'll want to check out the Sycamore Mall. There's a nice movie theater there. There's a Lucky's Market there, which is more than just a grocery store. They have a little a bar and a restaurant seating area and just a bunch of stuff going on. So that's interesting. And then once you get out to this area east of the Sycamore Mall, you can get on First Avenue, or get on, I would say better would be the sidewalk. And if you have a choice, get on the west side, which I guess you do have a choice, right? Get on the west side of First Avenue, the north or west side of that, because this whole area, it's not shown on the map, but that's been rebuilt. And it's just really nice that the way that that's been rebuilt there. It's a bridge that goes under the railroad, and a dedicated bike lane. If you are on that sidewalk, you can, well, it's not even a bike lane, it's a sidewalk. And anyway, then you see the dotted line again indicating that this is bicycle friendly. I don't know about that. I would say, maybe stay on the sidewalk. You don't need to be going like 15 to 20 miles an hour in the street. I would just stay out of that mess and stay on the sidewalk. And then if you just go a little bit further, there's another Hy-Vee after you cross Muscatine Avenue. And just beyond that Hy-Vee is where you can connect up to this really cool trail that doesn't really seem to go much beyond what you see here, but it's worth exploring. It's fun. It goes through this residential area, and I'll just keep following it along and show you here. It goes further east, and it's south of Friendship Street, north of the Hy-Vee. And then by the time it gets here, you'll see it goes to Court Hill Park or Brookside Drive. And then it's not that much further to get over to Scott Park and Scott Boulevard. Now, it's not shown here on the map, but you can actually take Brookside Drive, and then this little segment between Brookside Drive and Arbor Drive is just like a little sidewalk thing. Get over to Arbor Drive, then to Beach Street, and that's sort of your connection getting over here to Scott Park. And Scott Park has a nice trail system. It goes along through here and then into this residential area. And some of these other trails are marked, although as you see, they're kind of dependent on the streets as well. And then you can go north from there, and if you're adventurous, I can show you, if you do head north, there's this whole area at Rochester Avenue and Scott Boulevard. There's a, now they're saying Shorts Burgers East Side. I'm going to zoom in here a little bit because I think, let's see, Westbury. Oh yeah. Sorry, I'm just kind of getting oriented here myself. I think, yeah, there's Blackstone. I was thrown off because Blackstone was not showing up on the map here, but that's kind of a landmark. And there's a lot of other stuff opening up here. So this is becoming a hub for the sort of east side of town, where people can go, and coffee shops coming in and other things. So you can see yoga there. And that's about it. I wanted to, for those that wanted to watch the extended video, I wanted to show you some of the destinations you can get to on the east side of Iowa City. And so, as we zoom out again, you can see from a trails perspective that that starting point I showed you, that Iowa River Power, not to just keep mentioning that, but where were we over here, is a good central landmark, because there aren't that many trails on the east side of Iowa City. You'd want to do that a few times, but I can't imagine riding that every day, just because it's sort of out of the way and doesn't particularly get you anywhere, and there's no way to really make a loop out of it. And so I prefer the trails that go through woods and stream by streams and things. So watch when I take the satellite view away and I take the bicycles trails view away. It shows you then kind of a different perspective of the city. Without those trails, you'll kind of get a sense that the downtown Iowa City area is the center of the activity. Let me see, I think it's taking a little while for it to update the map. But, there we go. So if you look at it from like an urban development standpoint, Iowa City is pretty much the hub of the developed area. The suburbs kind of reach to the east and reach to the west, and there we are in the middle. But if you bring those bike trails back in, take a look, you'll see it's really more happening kind of along the river maybe, but then, this little bit of Iowa City and then on into Coralville. This is really where the bulk of the action happens, as far as bicycle trails from my perspective. And then when you bring in the satellite view, again, you can see a lot more green space here that's accessible by trails. So anyway, I know this was kind of a long video and went into a lot of detail. I hope I wasn't rambling too much. There are a lot of bicycling resources in the Iowa City area. You can start by just checking local bike shops, because they usually have a lot of information, maps, and helpful, knowledgeable people. Some of them have rentals, and there are bike clubs. And so, just kind of have to explore. But I think it's worthwhile showing people the Google Maps capability, because, whatever town you're going to, you can kind of check out the trail system that's on Google Maps and kind of create your own expedition. So thanks for watching. And if you have any questions, comments, suggestions, I always appreciate those. So have a great day.